So, Sarah, I'm so delighted that you can join this conversation. We've been having some delays. I'm very sorry, but finally we're here, and we can have this interview about the things that we both love and enjoy, church music, right? And in particular, bell choir, right? The work with bell choirs is very interesting and exciting. So thank you so much for joining. You are so generous, and welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Great. Let us remind our listeners our little bit of connection. Sarah was and is music director at Grace Lutheran Church in Lincoln, Nebraska, where I was an organist and Oshra was an organist when we were doctoral students at UNL. So, but that was actually what, 10 years ago, right? About
Yeah,
10 years ago, long time ago, and we haven't we actually met each other briefly for my concert experience, right, in Lincoln, but
yeah.
but that was very short, right? A couple of days. So actually, many things happened in between, right? In both sides of the Atlantic, and it's very interesting to see how you do your work and what ideas are circulating around in Nebraska right now. So. For starters, I usually ask people how they first fell in love with the organ. It's very interesting to hear this story, Sarah. Do you remember from your childhood who was the first person who introduced you to the pipe organ?
Well, I grew up in a small town in South Dakota, and my church was the only one that had a pipe organ. And so I always heard it from little on, always heard the organ. And I don't even know why, but my mom decided I should take piano lessons. And nobody else in my family was a musician, but she thought I should. And so I did. And then as we got older, as each organist graduated from high school, then the next girl with the most lessons would become the organist. So eventually, when I was about 16, 15 or 16, I became the organist. And I was lucky because my mom had a friend who was an organist, and she told her to take me to Yankton for lessons. So I was able to study with the college professor when I was in high school. So I had good lessons to start with, and then I came to Nebraska to study journalism. But I wanted to minor in organ because I had heard of George Ritchie, and I was supposed to study with him. And so I did, and then I never became a journalist, and instead I became a church musician. So that's kind of how it all happened.
Fantastic. A very interesting story from journalism to organ. But actually, they have more things in common than it might seem at first, because it's all about communication, right? You are communicating in musical ideas and with musical means, and journalists and people who write and talk, they communicate with words. But music is also a language, right? So you communicate with people because if you couldn't communicate, let's say congregation at Grace Lutheran Church, and you would play something that they don't understand and don't appreciate, connection would be not there, and you would be basically separated, and people would be frustrated probably, and you also would be frustrated, right? So that common ground is very important in communication.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic, Sarah. So you are doing such a tremendous, interesting things at Grace. I remember you having you are directing what, 2 or 3 choirs now?
Adult choir, a
Mm-hmm.
children's choir, and 2 bell choirs.
Oh, 4 choirs, basically. 2 bell choirs. That's even more than I can imagine doing myself, right? So, what is your normal Sunday schedule? Can you tell us a little bit?
Yeah, Sunday. We only have one service on
Mm-hmm.
Sunday, and that's at 9 o'clock. And then we have adult choir rehearsal after that, which is nice. We've gotten a few more people that way because they don't have to come back another night of the week. So that works out well. And then I run off and do music with Sunday school kids for a little while. And then I have my beginning bell choir rehearsal after that.
Mm-hmm.
So my Sunday morning is one big service and then 3 little rehearsals.
Right.
Well, one big and 2 little ones. So yeah,
It's quite a bit of work right up until lunch probably, right?
Exactly.
And when you get ready to go to lunch, you are quite exhausted probably and feel like you need some rest.
I'm happy if I don't have to cook lunch.
Right, right. And what about weekdays? What kind of rehearsals do you do during weekdays?
On Wednesday nights, we have my children's choir,
Mm-hmm.
and they are, when you were here, they were probably very small yet. Just little boys. I had like 3 or 4 little kids. I now have about 12 to 14, depending on the day, and they range from 7th graders down to 1st graders, so it's quite an age range, but we make it work.
Mm-hmm.
So we have that rehearsal, and then we have an evening prayer service every week, and then I'm kind of done. I do my own stuff, and then on Thursdays we have our advanced bell choir rehearsal.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's a full. It's like full-time position, right, Sarah, for you?
it's close, yeah. It's
Mm-hmm.
30 hours,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it's more, of course, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's
Yeah.
flexible. At least I can work it around what I need to, other things I need to do.
Of course, when you are a musical director, you're having flexibility to choose what you want, right? But
Right.
of course, you still have to report to I don't know, pastor and elders and committees, right? Things and congregation too, probably. You don't have that, luxury of doing what only you want, right? You still have to communicate with people, which you are very good at, of course. And what about some organ solo placements? Do you have some time where you can play solo organ music at church?
Yes. So
Mhm.
usually the prelude and the postlude are organ solos. Sometimes they're bells, like when the bells play, then they'll often play the prelude. But the postlude is almost always organ, and the prelude is most of the time.
Mhm.
And then on offertories, it depends. If the choir is singing, that they may sing there, or they might sing at communion. So we have those things. So yeah, there's some solo stuff. And then our Saturday night service is on that little median organ, and it just one manual, and so it's that's all solo organ usually.
Mhm.
Sometimes, but
Fa-
usually organ.
Fantastic. Well, we have to remind our listeners from around the globe because the organ that Sarah plays is the big one, at least. It is what, two manual Cassavant, right?
Cassavant, 33
Mhm.
ranks.
Mhm.
We just had a bunch of work done on it. The pipes were all cleaned and straightened, and we had solid state system put in to
Mhm.
the pistons, and the stops were becoming a little sluggish. And so now we have memory levels and some of those fun things. So we had all that work done, and we're waiting for our Zimbel stern. It's on
Oh.
its way.
Mhm. And of course, it's all real pipe organ. It's not virtual, not digital, not computer now. So it's all real stuff. Real. You can smell even the organ, right, in the
Yes,
church.
Grace is all about tradition and
Mhm.
real instruments and acoustic as much as possible. We try not to mic singers. We try not to mic much of anything.
Mhm.
And so yeah, it's real. It's beautiful. The space, as you remember, is lovely, and
Very
the organ,
lovely.
yeah, organ sounds great. Choir sounds good. So it's a really nice place to work for the beauty of it.
Exactly, exactly. And of course, how do you go about choosing the repertoire for your choirs and bell choirs? What where do you go with your inspiration?
Well, for the vocal choirs,
Mhm.
it's all about the words first. And so we start with the lectionary, and
Mhm.
we plan according to the scriptures of the day. And I've been at Grace for since 2002 as the director of music. And so I know the library, and the choir and I have built up a repertoire together that we can rely on too. So that's really nice. We were talking about that this year, how wonderful it is to have been together and have really good quality pieces that we know we can do without a lot of rehearsal. And that allows us to explore some new things, but you always have that reserve of things that you can do. So we start with those things, and then I look through. Grace is a member of the Royal School of Church Music, and so we get their little planning resource, which I love. And we're being Lutherans, we also use the ELCA's planning resource. So we use those some, but I would say between those and sort of my own personal memory and the library, that's how we do adult choir and kids choirs.
You know, it's very, very good because you pay attention to the text, to the readings, right, to the gospel, to the scriptures of the day, of the particular occasion, right, and that's something that not too many churches do here in Lithuania. Well, first of all, resources are scarce for musical ideas, right? You have to think about solo organ music very, very carefully, because not too many organ pieces exist particularly suited for Catholic Church occasions, right? But our hymnals are not as extensive and detailed as there in America. You have so I'm very happy that you have this situation where you can fit music and words and meaning provide meaning, because congregation really needs that and appreciates, I guess.
Yeah, I think they would miss it if we didn't do that. And with the organ music that we choose, a lot of times we choose something on the hymns of the day. But the freer organ music, I like to think about the feeling of the day, the tone of the for the postlude. What's the last hymn like, and try to find something that sort of sounds good with it, of course. So I have a lot of freedom to do what I want, but I always feel like I am an ambassador for this instrument that I love and for this music that I love. And church music is often sort of a battleground as people try to get their way with this style or that style or whatever. And I love the music of the past that is such high quality, and so I always want to present it the best we can.
Well, you mentioned Sarah, some of the tensions, right? We have across the globe probably, and within many congregations. Some people love contemporary music, right? And some love traditional music. And how do you connect those two different approaches at Grace?
Well, I'm kind of lucky because at Grace we just pretty much do traditional music. And so we've made a commitment to be a congregation that we're about congregational singing first and foremost. And in our space, the way it is designed and the acoustics of it, the organ leads that better than anything else.
Right.
So we are committed to organ, choir, occasionally brass on the festivals and things like that. Amplified music would not work very well in our space. It just would be awful. And so that's kind of made the decision for us. Our space has decided what works well. So sometimes people ask about doing something else, and we try to learn new hymns. We try to keep the best of the old, of course, and also learn new hymns, the best of the new, so that we're still fresh and hearing from contemporary voices as well, but never losing sight of all of the wonderful voices from the past who have contributed such amazing theological thoughts and musical gifts to the church. So it's a balancing act, but I don't have to balance as much as some people do, where they have to really truly do both. I don't really have to, so I'm kind of lucky.
Right. About those supplements, right, to the hymnals, they issue new supplements. I remember during our time in Lincoln, the new ELCA Lutheran hymnal was published, right, and as well the new supplement to that, right? And in the supplements they have usually contemporary style, more contemporary style hymns, right? And they are more difficult to sing as a congregation because they have syncopations and they require different approach, maybe more solo approach. So of course I understand how people's need to include more well, today's approach, because there are living composers writing right for the church, and there are some traditional gems from the past, from 2, 3, 4, 500 years ago, right? And this, if you would include everything, so your hymnal would be thicker and thicker and thicker every day, every year, every issue. But they have to then to balance, right? So that's what they do.
Yeah, and I think one of the keys to doing the traditional music that like we do and doing it well is actually the children and the children's choirs, and that's why I take time out of my day on Sunday to go talk with the Sunday school students and to teach them songs. Kids can memorize things so fast, and they learn amazingly large amounts of hymnody if you put it in front of them. And when the older people see the young ones doing it, they're like, well, okay, I guess we can do this too. And so you can really use the children to help lead by teaching. And that's worked out well for us. And I think that I'm proud of the choir, the kids' choirs, because of the repertoire that they have in their hearts that they've learned, memorized. I doubt that it will ever leave them, and that makes me happy. So I think that's a really important key to doing this and doing it well.
You're right. This generation, the new generation of kids, grew up at Grace, right? From the year of, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years old, right? And they right away started to sing, right? And you've been leading them from a decade, right? Or even more now. And they grown up, right? Your own kids grown up, right? And you have this fantastic opportunity to lead them into the next generation, to the next adult choir, probably, right? And you have this transition period also for teenagers, right? And things like they are interested probably in more contemporary styles, but you probably communicate with them the value of tradition also. So, by the way, how do you communicate with teenagers at Grace?
Well, I'm just kind of starting again, because when you were here, I think we still had the youth choir. And then those kids grew up and became adults. And there was a time where we didn't have enough teenagers and we had nobody. And now my children's choir is beginning to be a youth choir again. And so I feel lucky because I've had them since they were 3 years old, and they know me and they know what we do. And so I don't have much trouble with them. I don't have to discuss with them why we should sing Bach, because they already know that we do sing Bach and we like Bach, and they love it. I mean, we did Bach last year or the year before, and that was their favorite piece of the year. And so it's just a matter of exposing them to the great music, and they love it. They're working on a Handheld piece now, and they love it. It's not even a fast one, but they still love it. So it's just, I think, when you give kids good quality music and you're enthused about it, I think they'll be enthused about it.
Exactly. Your passion shines through, probably, right? And not only kids, but entire congregation can see your I would say commitment, right? And your purpose, right?
Yes, and they have to know that you love them, that you're not just doing this because this is what you like to do and you're imposing it on them. They have to see that you're in it for them too.
Right.
The musician's ego can really get in the way and sometimes. And so you really have, I think, keep that in check and think about your people and serving them as opposed to them serving you somehow.
And of course, you are a professional organist with a master's degree, right, in that field, and you had fantastic teachers like Quentin Faulkner and George Ritchie, right? And you could feel of doing more solo organ pieces, right? More pieces that you particularly would enjoy, but you think about the congregation and the choir as well, so that they could not feel neglected also. So that's important.
But I only have my bachelor's degree.
Not yet master's. Okay, you will have.
I did a bachelor's of journalism and then a bachelor's of music. And so I was at school and took lessons for 9 years, but I did not get a master's degree.
All right. So, but never mind. I've never noticed that you don't have masters while we were together working.
Lots of lessons, lots and lots of lessons.
Right. Experience is more important than the degree, right? Probably.
Right. Well, and
Hands-on.
George and Quentin were such good teachers, and I just think we were so privileged to be able to study with them, and also just to have their example of how they did things musically. I just feel very fortunate to have been part of that group of people.
Yeah, it's an entire generation of organists grew up on that campus, right? And entire organ studio was so friendly and without any competition whatsoever between each student, and also between professors. Quentin and George, they were real friends and real colleagues, right? So this friendliness shines through in what you are doing. Also, it leads to your endeavors, and you are also an ambassador of their way of thinking and leading, right?
Yeah, I really think that way too. I mean, without them, I couldn't do what I do. You know, without their teaching, I couldn't do what I do, and of course, I gained so much from their commitment to quality music and all the things they taught us, and I want to share that with others. So it really echoes out. Kind of, it's like the stone thrown in the pond with the ripples on the water. So what they've accomplished was amazing.
So let's talk a little bit about the bell choir, right? I remember, during our days at Lincoln, you kind of developed this fantastic bell choir program, right? You rehearsed, you performed, you did concerts, bell choir concerts, right? And you've got many people. How many people are in each group? Do you know?
The advanced bell choir is 13, and then the beginning bell choir is 7 or 8, and that is a mixture of kids and beginning adults. And so they don't play as often for church. You know, they just work on something, and when they get it ready, they play it. And so there's no pressure on them as they learn. And then the advanced bell choir, there's quite a bit of pressure on them because they play quite a bit and they play hard things. But we're blessed with really good musicians in that group, and we've had some turnover as people move away and get different jobs and things like that. And it's always, with the bell choir, really scary to lose a ringer, because you think, oh, how am I going to replace so and so? Well, so far we've been lucky, and someone has always kind of stepped up. But it's quite a group. It really is.
Right, because each person is responsible for a few bells, right?
Right.
And if you lose one person, you lose entire, maybe a few intervals, right? So it's important. And
so it's really, if someone gets sick or can't show up on the day of a performance, it's really stressful. And I have a couple people, one in particular, who is fearless and will step up and try to ring it if we need her to. And she does pretty well. But yeah, you don't want to miss bell performances. You better be there if you said you would.
Do people attend rehearsals also well?
Pretty good. I mean, I think it's more and more difficult, and I don't know if it's with people are so busy, and it's just more and more difficult to sort of schedule something that, every Thursday night I am going to go to bell rehearsal. But I still have pretty good attendance, and we've had a couple people with some health problems, and so that's been a little slow. But my internet connection just said it was a little unstable. Can you still hear me?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. Great. Okay, good. So I have pretty good. I mean, they know they're responsible to each other. You are responsible to these other people, not just to me. But if you miss, you're letting all of us down. So that's good motivation to get there.
And of course, their families, their friends are watching them perform. That's the big motivation, right? They can, nowadays, they can take pictures, share their performances. Do you do live streaming of musical performances at Grace?
We don't. We haven't started that. live streaming, I'm not sure about copyright. I think it would be okay, but I'm never quite sure. And but we just haven't. We've recorded each of our bell concerts sort of for our own little archive, so we know what we've done. But no, we haven't done. We're talking about it, but we haven't gotten there yet.
I think you will, because it's a big trend now around the world, and you know, people even at rock stars concerts, they go with their phones, right, in their hands, and they film, they record and live stream a few minutes, not the entire concert, but a few minutes to their followers on the social media, and that's huge, right? Because nobody can really forbid that, because it's, well, just a few minutes, right? They are doing great work for that performance, because they're spreading the word, and but you still need, of course, good internet connection for that, and massive data amount.
Yeah, yeah. So that's
video.
Always something that the techie people have to work that out, you know.
True. Fantastic. So what other things you do besides congregational, besides appearing on Sunday church services with bells? For example, do you go to conventions or to other congregationals to sing or to perform?
Yeah, sometimes we have. We've gone to some conferences that have been really helpful. The best thing about the conferences is that it gets the bell choir to see what other bell choirs are doing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and you really don't know what's possible sometimes with an instrument, of course, if you stay in your own insulated little place. And so just getting them out to see what others are doing was really, really important. And once they saw that, our bell choir, as you know, plays in the balcony, so people don't see them. And so whenever they used to play in front of people, they used to get stage fright, and they would just be terrified. And so that's one of the reasons we started doing that Christmas concert, which is a big deal now, because I thought they just need to get out there and play a whole concert in front of people, and they'll get over this, and they have. It's much better. But that's a different thing, you know, to perform with people looking at you is much different than being up in the balcony where no one can see you. And so they needed to see people perform, and they needed to see what they could do and stuff. And once they did that, they started growing as musicians, I think, more. So that was good. And then we do our concert, our Christmas concert, and then usually in the spring we do a talent show for the congregation, and the bell choir will play at the end of it, so we can play rock and roll numbers at the end, and that's fun. We would obviously never get to play those otherwise, but we want to play them, so we do that. And we have gone and played at some other events. It's always such a production to move a bell choir around with all the tables and the foam and the, you know, but we have done a few things. And so it's fun. It's good outreach. People are always very curious about it.
Yeah, it's like movable organ, right? If you could move your entire organ, not only console, but entire instrument someplace, that would be exciting, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So, but you can do that with bells, well, much more flexible moving of that particular area, and people are excited to see how they're doing, right? And they can see, oh, this bell is ringing now, this one, and they can follow the music, right? It's very, very powerful impact to see and to hear, to touch things, right? Because many bells are not of the same height and same weight, right? You need sometimes two hands for one, probably, right?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, they love to see the big bells, you know, and they also love to see those teeny little ones. And so it is fun, and I think kids are fascinated by the bells, to see them, and you know, just people of all ages, really. They just like to watch them, and as long as they're played well, they're nice to listen to. So it's a challenge to present the music the way you want it to be presented, but it's a good challenge. It's also hard, because if you think about a flutist playing a melody line, they have all the notes of the melody. But with a bell choir, all those notes of the melody are divided between 5 or 6 people. And so you really have to work out, you know, dynamics and bringing the melody, and there's a lot to do to it.
Each person is like one organ pipe, right? In organ music terms, right? And it really makes sense to work together. It's very collaborative way of performance, right? Of performing. So you have to really work together. In choir, for example, yes, some people can sing, some may show up, some don't, and well, it's not that noticeable. But when a few people are missing in bell choirs, everybody
Right.
notices, right?
Yes.
So fantastic, Sarah. So remind us, you started this project, Bell project, when in 2002, right?
Yeah,
Or
yes, that's when I became director. They had the bell choir before, and I had played in the bell choir
Mhm,
before,
mhm,
and they were good and everything. But when I started as director, I thought they could be better. I thought they could be challenged
mhm,
more, and so I worked towards challenging them more.
right. And do you, of course, you were trained as an organist more than as a bell choir director, right? So you had to train yourself, probably some of the notation, right?
Yeah.
For the signs of bell choir. How did you find that symbols difficult to learn or not really?
Not too hard because a couple of my ringers have been ringers for like 30 years. They've
Oh.
just done it, and so they're really great at knowing what this or that means. And then the Handheld Musicians of America has some resources, little booklets and little um, things that you can put right in the folders, the music folders that
Mhm.
show all the symbols on a little sheet of paper. And so we use those, and so that part wasn't so hard. I think the hardest part about it was just the basic conducting of it. And I mean, it's very rhythmical, and we do things that are in 7/8 or mixed meter going back and forth, and at first figuring out how to coordinate all that, is hard. But they the group is good, so then it let me grow and figure out what I needed to do. So it's you learn as you go. It's just you always get better, hopefully.
Fantastic. You grow with the group, right?
Yeah,
They grow and you grow. It's a mutual growth.
definitely.
Fantastic. So, Sarah, I think we are getting close to our time right now, right? So, can you give us an insight that you wish you knew when you were just starting church music directing and bell choir, and also just in general being church music musician? You wish you knew, but you didn't, right? You know now. Can you give us that insight to people around the world that they would be appreciated very much?
Um, well, I think when you first start out, you worry a lot about the music.
Mm-hmm.
You're all worried about the music, and of course that is important. But at the end of the day, I almost think dealing with the people is more important, and being able to forge relationships with your choir members and having them know that you care about them and that you're all in this together. We ask a lot of our choir members at Grace anyway. I don't know, but like during Holy Week, they sang Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, every single
Mm-hmm.
service during Holy Week. That's a lot for a volunteer musician to commit to. So they need to know that we appreciate them, and that even if we make a mistake, that's not the most important thing. That the fact that we are trying and that we're serving and that we are leading worship, that's the most important thing. We're doing it together. We're all in it together. So I think if it would have been helpful to know more people. Not, I shouldn't say that I needed to learn people skills, but I mean, so much of the job
Mm-hmm.
is dealing with people, much more than it is sitting down on the bench and practicing.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of time for honestly practicing sometimes, but you're always dealing with your people, and that's the best part of the job in many ways. But it's not quite what you think it is. It's not like you'll go off to the organ loft and be by yourself for a while.
True.
So
It's like maybe what 20% practice and 80% dealing with people, probably, right?
Yeah.
80
Yeah.
20, 80 20, 20 80.
Yeah.
That's about what it takes to do in most areas, right? You prepare a product, right, and then it takes a certain amount of time, but to communicate about that product, it takes, well, extremely much more time, right? And to do this correctly, to do this with impact, and you're doing so gracefully at Grace, Sarah, and of course people here appreciate you, and I wish you will have the many years of successful church music serving in your community too, and very healthy family, also family life, right? And they are all part of your group of they are all doing the church music activities, right? And I know that, and
family effort.
family teamwork, right? Teamwork.
Yes, exactly.
Fantastic. Sarah, can you give us a link where people can connect with you and your work online? Maybe you can give us some of the place your website for Grace, or your own social profile. That would be great.
Sure. Grace's website is www.egrace.org. So you can find it there. And then on that website, there's a link to Grace's Facebook page, which I think that's the easiest way to find it. And Grace's Facebook page, I keep it up mostly. So there'll be a lot of worship updates and music updates on there. So if people want to see what we're doing, that's a great place to check.
Fantastic. So Sarah, for our closing, I know it's a lot of work, right? Doing all those church music activities with choirs, with people, with bells, with brass for special occasions. Is it worth it? Is it worth doing that work? I know it's tremendous effort. Can you say, is it worth it?
Oh yeah, it's a great job. It's a great lifestyle. The kids are with me a lot doing it, and we're just together doing it as a family. So that's a lot of fun, and the friendships you make and the relationships you have. Yes, definitely worth it. And I always think when I sit on the bench in that beautiful space and I can hear the organ echoing down the aisle and see the pretty windows and all, it's just a beautiful place to go to work, and I think I'm pretty lucky.
And people really can hear that impact you're making, right, with your musical activities. That's a good satisfaction to know that you are impacting their lives for entire week, for example, right, from Sunday to Sunday, and for the next Sunday you prepare something else, and you will keep doing the work that matters for a very long time, hopefully.
Yeah, it's not something we can hold in our hands, but I think we hold it in our hearts, and I think it's more important. I think it's just it's a great privilege to do this work.
Fantastic, Sarah. God bless you and your work, and let's keep in touch. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Vidas.